Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a fantastic guest with me today who's got an amazing story to share with us. His name is Isaiah Orozco, and he went from making over a six-figure income to becoming an alcoholic and drug addict with legal problems and struggling with major anxiety and depression to eventually losing it all. He managed to climb out of the mud and build something much bigger and better for himself. He is now making more income than ever before and is also helping others elevate themselves at the same time. Isaiah, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. It's honestly an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me.
And as I told you before we started recording, I am also always so honored and impressed when a man agrees to be on the FemiNinja Project, because just the name itself, I was always afraid would turn guys away.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that, but I really like what you're doing here. I think it's awesome. So I definitely wanted to join.
Well, you have such an amazing story. And I'm just going to ask you to start sharing it with the audience, and then we'll just take it from there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, we have to take it back about almost 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. Maybe in kind of a late teens, early 20s guy. I was just really skinny. Like I'm telling you, I was 120 pounds at 21 years old. I was watching all the guys around me, like going on different dates and, doing all the cool stuff that we thought was cool back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really where I guess the anxiety and the self-doubts and, the depressions really started. I just wasn't really aware of it at the time. So that's actually what motivated me to move to Denver. Is at the time I thought that I was going to go build this crazy nice life, and I was going to be the man. Like I was going to be the man. So I wanted to run away, move to Denver. But what I didn't realize at the time is I was just running from my problems and kind of burying them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I actually moved to Denver. At first it was really a struggle. I don't know if you've ever moved somewhere where you don't know anybody. Like
Yes, I moved to Denver when I was 21.
Really?
Just a few days after graduating college. It's a really long story. I could share it with you sometimes, but there was definitely a man involved who had my entire life planned for me. And, and he wasn't taking no for an answer. That and a few other things. It was like, it might be a good idea if I left town. And I grew up in a small steel town in Western Pennsylvania. And of course I grew up with four sisters and, big family. And it was like, it might be a good time to get away. So with a college roommate, she actually was originally from Cleveland. She didn't want to go back to Cleveland. We were in college together. She didn't want to stay in Pittsburgh. So I said, hey, why don't we move to Denver? And she said, okay. So we
Yeah.
moved to Denver, and I thought, don't know anyone. I don't know anything, but at least I have one of my closest friends with me. And about 2 weeks after we moved here, we went to a discotheque back in those days. And she met a guy in this bar, went home with him that night, and moved in with him a couple of days later, leaving me completely on my own. So yes, I
Oh
know what
no.
it's like.
Yeah. So see, you can understand and relate to that. I'm not too sure how many people can, but the way I would explain it is it's kind of like somebody removes the comfort blanket out from underneath you, so you have nothing to fall on, right? So when you do fall, you hit the ground. Like,
You hit hard too.
yeah. And kind of like your friend, she kind of was the comfort blanket, I guess, and she was
Yeah.
gone, you know. But yeah, so I learned that the hard way, and we'll get into that. So I moved away, and I just told myself, like, I'm gonna go and chase after every single dream that I have, and I'm gonna build the body, I'm gonna build the job, I'm gonna get the apartment, the cars, the clothes, the girls. One thing that you'll probably notice as far as what I pointed out is those are all the wrong motives to be driven by.
Mm-hmm.
Like being driven by those motives, you don't really realize at the time that it's kind of a dark path to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, it was really dark because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anything. I just had whatever I fit inside my little two-seater car at the time, packed that up into my apartment. And then my job opportunity that I had. So I spent a lot of time in my apartment just by myself watching
Oh,
TV.
yeah.
Yeah, as you could tell.
Well, I
And
didn't even have a TV, so Yeah.
See, even worse, even worse. And the worst part about it is like I moved downtown because I knew I wasn't going to know anybody, right? So all these things were consistently and constantly happening around me, but I didn't know anybody or know a way to get involved.
Oh, that's so much worse.
Yeah, and it was terrible. And I guess what it really brought out of me was that thrive, like that need and desire for validation.
Mhm.
It really, really enhanced those problems that I was having. Again, I wasn't really aware of the problems at the time,
Mhm.
but it really, really enhanced those. So you mix my original motives and drivers that I'd mentioned just recently, and then you mix it and add that on top of it. It became like this thirst or this need for validation and attention.
Mhm.
Which it wasn't good. It really, I found friends eventually, but I found them through alcohol, which then led to the drugs, which then led to the Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, honestly, it was almost every day of the week that we were doing something.
Mhm.
And at the time, it was fun. I mean, there's a lot of really good memories that came out of it. But there was more bad times that were involved, right? So getting involved with that group of friends, I was really thankful to have the friends. But about halfway through the summer, that summer, I started realizing I think my conscience was speaking to me, and my conscience was telling me like this isn't who you are, or you're not happy. And instead of looking inward for those answers as to why I was feeling that way, I started looking around me and kind of blaming the people.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, blaming my friends, and then kind of leads to like dramatic nights where all of a sudden this happens or that happens. And instead of ever really looking at myself and taking ownership, I just kind of kept pointing the finger and blaming everybody else.
Mhm.
And so that group of friends slowly kind of faded away and not being my group of friends.
Mhm.
um, and so at this time I also decided to get a job at the gym because I spent most of my time at the gym anyways. Why not work there? This was actually a giant blessing in disguise. This is where I met a lot of my friends, some of them which are still friends today. And this is where I really found myself kind of where I fit in. Um, the only problem with that is I was still driven by those wrong motives. I just didn't realize it at the time. So I actually ended up meeting a girl. She's honestly, really, to this day, one of my favorite people I've ever met. Um,
Aw.
yeah, she really is one of my favorite people I ever met. Didn't end the best way, but I mean, looking back on it, I realized it's because of who I was at that time.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought I was doing the settling down thing. I really did. I thought I was going to settle down, have a family. I found the one. But I was really never happy with myself. And I was really, still had that anxiety, still searching for the validation, secretly battling battles and like just dangerous battles in my head. And eventually that started coming outward and being taken out on her. So like finding flaws with her, and then just kind
Mm.
of, being that terrible person to kind of started breaking her down for her flaws, when really it was me being mad at myself for my own flaws.
Wow. I just
Yeah, it's
have a hard
terrible.
time, seeing you do that just from the short time that I've known you and had this conversation with you. It just doesn't seem like that's in your nature.
Yeah, and it's weird because I don't think it's ever who I was at heart. I just
Mhm.
think it's the trap that I fell in and the results that came out of it. And I think that you become part of your surroundings, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
Um, Everybody already kind of knows that, of course. I mean, you are the some of the five people you hang out with, right?
Right.
And if
Right.
you look at that time in my life, a lot of it was spent by myself, or a lot of it was spent with people doing drugs and alcohol. So there
Mhm.
really wasn't too much good coming out of that.
Mhm.
The other problems with that relationship, and this is stuff that I'm not proud of, is again just seeking that validation. um, I started seeking it externally as well, so from other women and other things, stuff that I'm not proud of, but it made me feel alive at the time.
Mhm.
And so doing what felt right because that's what my anxiety was telling me would make me feel better. And those voices in your head, I like to think of it like a leaky faucet. And it's like somebody just doesn't quite have that faucet tightened all the way. And so there's just a poison drip consistently dropping in the back of your mind, being your subconscious. And
Mhm.
that subconscious was just not leading me in the right direction.
Mhm.
So that relationship fell apart. And the crazy thing about it is I jumped right back into another relationship with someone else. Um, and to understand this part and why I laugh is you'd have to go back even further. And I'm talking like 15 years old to about last year.
Okay, if I may ask, how old are you now?
I'm 29.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be 30 in March, so
Well,
that's
happy
coming up
birthday.
really quick.
30 isn't the end, trust me.
No, I think 30 is the beginning, to be
It
honest with you.
certainly is.
I really do.
Actually, 50 is the beginning. 50 is even better, but
I've
I
heard
digress.
that. I've heard that. Well, I got about 21 years that I could start, But um I've always struggled with being alone, right? I've always struggled with being alone. I hated being alone. There was this really crazy dark feeling that would exist, and just these storm clouds in my head whenever I was alone. And the way that I escaped that was through having a girlfriend and being in a relationship. Early on, I had some pretty good relationships. I just wasn't ready for them. And like I told you, I ran from my problems in Utah and straight to Denver. And as soon as I could, as I mentioned, I ended up in another relationship. Like, it was terrible. But I jumped right back into another relationship at this time. And again, another wonderful woman. She's really great. I really don't wish anything bad upon her. Honestly, I kind of wonder what the conversation would be like if we could just sit down and have one last conversation. But the problem with this one was, again, same motives, same problems, same things. As you can tell, there's just this vicious cycle I was stuck in. Everything would go like this and be really, really great. And then it would slowly fall down and really kind of crumble to the ground. Around this time dating her, I still wasn't being the best person. I wasn't being the best boyfriend. I was still drinking. I was still doing drugs behind her back, actually. Yeah,
yeah, that's never good.
No, and she really did want what's best for me. I think she, of all people, really saw what truly existed within me and who I was at heart. And I think that she really, really was just waiting for that day for that to come to life. But I started keeping a lot of stuff behind her back. It's kind of what I was doing, where I was at, when, what, all that good stuff. But around this time, I was also where everything caught up to me. Next, I got a phone call from my boss, and he was like, "Hey, Isaiah, we really appreciate everything you've been doing, but we got to let you go." And at the time, I pretended like I didn't know why. I really did. I was like, "What do you mean? Like, why? I'm working hard," and just kind of all this BS, which in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't true. I knew that I was spending most of my time hungover, distracted, not really even showing up for the day half the time, kind of halfway in it, halfway out. But this led to me wondering how I'm going to pay my bills. How am I gonna pay for my apartment that I had downtown overlooking the city? And
Yeah, that's expensive.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap. And how am I going to pay for this new car that I just bought? And
Ooh.
like all these other things that I had going on. I just barely bought a bunch of furniture for my apartment. I put that on credit because I had to have the nicest things. That's what I thought, at least. So there's a lot of stuff that happened. At this time, I didn't really know where to go. I didn't really have anybody to help me. My family was in Utah, and I could have come home at any time. But the problem is at this time, I was also the things I was getting involved in were starting to catch up to me as well, because I was in the middle of a legal process. And so I couldn't legally leave the state of Colorado without permission, without being considered on the run.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really kind of scary, not sure where to go. And we talk about that comfort blanket to fall back on. There is nothing there, right? So I was just sleeping in my car.
Did your family know this, that you couldn't come home, or was that something you kept on the QT?
They eventually found out. I told them, but there's a lot of stuff that I didn't tell them at the time.
Which
Because
is
I was
probably
embarrassed.
smart. Well,
Yeah, and I was embarrassed. Like I even telling these stories now, I might be able to laugh about them and kind of, find some sort of humor or whatnot. But it wasn't until about last summer that I really started realizing, like, this is what makes me, and this is who I am. It's like I don't have to identify as the person I was or as the problems or the things I did. But it's part of who I am and why I am who I am. Right.
Well, I salute you for being able to, share your story. You're very courageous, because it is a very vulnerable experience to start telling people, what your life was like and what you went through. But I really appreciate that, because I think that's when we really, really get that deep level of healing. Once we really just say, that was then, this is now. These are the blessings that I received from it, the lessons learned, and now you can share them with the world and help other people.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because we'll get into that part here in a minute, but
Okay.
like those thoughts exactly are what changed my perspective on the world in so many ways. Um, yeah, I'm excited for that. But so at this time, of course, no job, nowhere to go, not really anything going on. Any relationship I did have, I kind of started burning bridges. I always like to tell people I found myself standing in the ashes of all the burned bridges, kind of alone.
Wow.
Sleeping in my car, showering in the gym. To be honest with you, I was just eating whatever I could, trying to like. I was drinking some kind of secretly behind closed doors because it would suppress my appetite. What a good way to suppress the appetite, right? But yeah, all I really had was the gym at this time. And so I just stayed focused in the gym. I just figured, hey, I just got to get stronger, bigger, whatever. Like this is okay. One day it'll pass. I really found an album at the time. I don't remember the name of the album. I just remember a couple of the verses and the songs that really made me feel like one day it's going to be okay, you know?
Mhm.
So I had that album on repeat over and over again, the same two songs at least.
So let me ask you this. So the job that you were let go from, that wasn't the job that you had in the gym.
No, the job that I had in the gym, I actually ended up quitting because I couldn't keep up with working at both jobs and my
Okay.
lifestyle that I had. I kind of skipped past that part, but it was shortly after I met the first girlfriend that I spoke of.
Okay. Got it.
So I was lucky though. My dad's boss at the time, a man named Larry, super great guy. He's an amazing guy. I built somewhat of a relationship with him while I was working with him as well. And my dad had just told me one day, he was like, Larry has a really nice house and he might have an extra room. He's like, I'm not going to ask him for you, but maybe if you're willing to ask him, he might be able to let you stay there. And so I had that conversation with Larry. And like I said, Larry's an amazing guy. He opened his doors to me, let me stay there. He was like, I know money's kind of tight, but maybe we'll figure something out. Um, Luckily for me at this time, a little bit of time had gone by and the whole legal stuff that I was getting involved in, it kind of simmered down and that came to an end. And I finally got permission to leave the state. So I was like, yes, I'm leaving the state. I'm out of here. I'm going home. Like, I'm done with all of this. I'm never looking back. I left the state, and around that time, me and my girlfriend, we were kind of really rocky, not really working. And then we decided that we wanted to make it work. So I left the state. I came back to Utah. I got a job working at the bar as a bouncer. Um, just something that honestly, it was really just something to keep me busy so that I wasn't out drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I just
And
saw
how
it as an
ironic you
escape.
were in a bar.
What's that?
How ironic you were in a bar.
I know, right? Like I know, and
Gotta
it's
love
odd
the irony.
because it's just so odd because it really worked. I mean, I got to be around the crowd and I got to meet people and have conversations and stuff, but I was sober and I wasn't taking part in everything they were taking part in. Um, but my
It's really
girlfriend at the
funny
time,
when you're not drinking and you are in that environment and everybody else is, you sometimes see like how ridiculous people look.
yeah,
And it's a lot easier to stay sober rather than join that crowd.
it really is. It really is. Unfortunately for me, it didn't last very long.
Oh,
I I met up with one of my friends that I had known for a couple of years. She's really cool. She's got some problems of her own. But we ended up rekindling, and she invited me over to her like housewarming party slash like 4th of July party, I believe it was. And I wasn't gonna go, but then I had the night off and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go. Why not? Go meet some people. Um, I went and I had a really good time. But it opened up the doors. They were the same doors that I walked through right before.
mm,
Yep, yep. I had actually met a different girl that was one of her friends. And so being the bad, terrible person I was at the time, I really kind of just left my other girlfriend and then jumped into this relationship. As you can tell, I was really broken and had a need to fit in and some sort of belonging. Um,
mm.
that summer was probably one of the most fun summers I had ever had. but also on the other side of it was just absolutely terrible. I had a lot of fun and good memories that I can look back on and smile for, but I also was doing a lot of drinking, doing a lot of drugs, not really going anywhere in my life, honestly, not really going anywhere at all. I'd actually taken steps backwards from coming back from Colorado. And the quality of my relationship was worse than it's ever been. I hate to say that, because this is another human being we're talking about who was involved. But the reason why I say that is because that's actually what opened my eyes eventually. Eventually I started taking inventory of my life, and I started realizing that like the quality of my girlfriend has gone downhill drastically. And again, I really, really hate saying that, but it's the reality of my situation. It went downhill drastically. And I'm talking about his character, lifestyle, habits, perceptions, all that stuff. It just went really down. But I started also looking at my life and who I was becoming. I was kind of becoming more of a compulsive liar, and I was kind of becoming more of untrustworthy. I wasn't like I wouldn't rob from you or steal from you or purposely hurt anybody, but couldn't really rely on me. I also I felt like I felt just like very disappointed in myself when I started taking inventory in my life. One very important question that I always tell people when they're going through things is to establish how you feel, but then establish how you feel about those feelings. Because you can get so caught up in feeling like I feel sad, but like, how do I feel about being sad? And like, how do I feel about why I feel sad? You start to find some clarity rather than just being stuck on I feel sad, right? So around this time is when I decided that I was just going to disappear and focus on me. You see those videos all the time. It's like, focus on yourself for 6 months and see what happens.
Like, right. I would think that that would be exhausting.
Yeah. And it was very exhausting time in my life, honestly. But it's almost like everything happens for a reason. I don't know. I speak of karmic debt a lot, and there's different energies and forces in the world that exist that you just don't see or hear every day. I started getting my life in order, started focusing more on the gym, started drinking less, stopped doing the drugs cold turkey, which honestly, I don't know how I did that, but I'm just happy that I did. And then around this time, I actually got a call back from the boss who had fired me the first time. Yeah. Yeah. He called me, and I don't remember his exact words, but the way that I took it was him asking if I grew up and was ready to be a man yet. Yeah, because we talked about, I'd asked him why he considered me for this position, and he just mentioned that like I'm young and I'm full of potential and I really have a lot of skill sets, and there's really a lot of stuff I'm capable of, but I just haven't been living up to par to what he sees, right? So long story short, we had about a good 30-45 minute conversation. I told him I would think about it because I wanted to make sure that I truly was ready to like step in and prove myself, because I didn't want to embarrass him or anybody else who had their neck on their line vouching for me. But eventually, about a week later, I called him. Or go ahead.
That in itself is a very unselfish and gracious move on your part, putting somebody else's feelings ahead of yours, like not wanting to embarrass them or somehow, compromise their judgment.
Yeah. Honestly, it was kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard because the first thing I wanted to say was like, oh yeah, I'll start tomorrow. Like, because he didn't know I wasn't working. I didn't have no money coming in, like I'll start tomorrow. But I like you said, I had to be selfless and really look at the bigger picture. So I accepted that position eventually. And honestly, out the gate, it was a little bit kind of exciting, but a little rough because I jumped in and I took a really big bite. And I was a program manager, right? Okay. So now I'm overseeing the same program that I was working on, but rather than just seeing the projects in Northern Colorado, I'm overseeing Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Portland.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot more responsibility. And I feel like I lost my touch a little bit because I wasn't practicing anything. You got to remember, I was just drinking and partying and having fun. So it was a little rough. It was a little rough. But I wouldn't say it was terrible. I think I just knew that within myself, I can do better. I am capable of more, and I'm not living up to that bar that I have set for myself. So when I say it's a little rough, I think that I was somewhere in the middle, but not quite at the bar yet.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, that
and
was a lot closer to the top of the bar than you were previously.
very, very,
Yeah,
very much closer.
that was a vast
Yes,
improvement.
yes, very much, which I'm proud of. I'm proud of. And
Mhm.
it's kind of funny. I can't help but laugh at it because we're about a month, maybe 2 months into the job at this time. And I'm starting to get my feet underneath me, and things are starting to go smoother. And again, I'm not drinking or doing anything along those lines anymore. I'm staying sober. I do at the time I still would drink from time to time, but yeah, I would be very picky as to when. And so one of me and my buddies, we were out grabbing dinner, and everybody we knew was at the bar, and we were like, why don't we go to the bar and just say what's up to everybody? Like, why not? And so we go to the bar, say what's up. He has a couple drinks. I'm like, whatever reason, I'm like, I don't want to drink tonight. I'm good. And I don't know if you've ever been to a bar sober. We kind of said something about it earlier, but I don't want to be there for longer than 10 minutes.
Mhm, mhm,
Like there's nothing for me to talk about when I'm sober there,
mhm.
So we stayed for about I want to say 15, 20 minutes, and we went home. But on the way home, I got pulled over for some BS. He said I swerved outside the line type of thing, but I know all he was looking was for somebody with potential DUI. Um, yeah, it was some BS reason to pull me over. Um, but I found out I had a warrant for like a year and a half in Colorado. Yeah. So I find out I have a warrant in Colorado for like a year and a half that I had
For
no
what?
idea about. This is at the time one of my girlfriends, when her and I broke up, she decided to get back at me that she was going to report something that had happened 2 years prior to that. And so I find out I have a warrant like about a year and a half for a situation that happened like 2 years before that, maybe a year before that.
Wow.
Right. And so I'm sitting inside the jail, and I'm like, I have work on Monday. I just started this job. I just got this chance. At the time, I didn't know what I was in there for. They just say, oh, you have a warrant. They don't give you much information. Anytime I ask anybody, they're just like, oh, we don't know. We just hear that you need to be extradited. And so I start like, I start asking the inmates like, hey, what's extraditing mean? What's this mean? What's that mean? Like, what's going on? Because I have no idea what is
But they're
even
thinking,
happening.
who is this rookie? How did he even get here in the first place?
Yeah, yeah. People
This
are
Boy
asking me
Scout.
too. Yeah, they're like, "What are you even in here for?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know
Wow.
what's going on." Um, about a week goes by, still nothing. I don't get any information from anybody. We're still trying to figure out what's going on.
And are you still in jail at the time?
I'm still in jail at the time. Yeah. Luckily, I was able to get a hold of my boss and like just tell him what was going on, and he had my back. And so he essentially told management, because he wasn't sure what was going on either.
Mhm.
So I didn't want him put him in a position where he had to lie or try to cover for me. I didn't want him to
Right.
do any of that. I just told him that, hey, I'm gonna need like a week off. Like, I'm sorry it's last minute, but I need like this week off. And so he's like, okay, I hope everything's all right. So he told my upper management from there. Everybody's like, okay, hopefully everything's okay. But the more I started learning about this extradition, I realized it can take up to 30 days for them to come and get me. So like we're talking 30 days just for them to physically be there to pick me up. And then however many hours it takes if they go straight back to Colorado to get there. And then I have to go through all their booking process, stand in front of a judge, and then be released. Yeah. So honestly, really, really terrible time. Um,
And
Luckily,
even when you were released, would you have been able to leave the state of Colorado and go back to Utah, or did you have to stay in the state again?
at the time, this is where it got really tricky and why it took so long, actually. So I eventually did get released. It was about 2.5 weeks that I was in there.
Okay.
And I had to go through a whole process and jump through so many hoops, just so that I didn't have to go in Colorado, like you just said, and stay in Colorado and then get permission to leave. So I had to have all these different hoops I had to jump through so I could be living in Utah while I was going through this case.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now I understand why you don't want to come back to Colorado and visit the Rocky Mountains. You got them over there in Utah.
Colorado's in the past for me.
I understand why.
Yeah. I'm actually planning on taking a trip here in a couple weeks. I have a storage unit out there. I want to go grab some things. So me and my cousin, we were like, let's just load up the car with whatever we can load it up with and just go
Be
get away.
careful.
Why is that?
Well, just, just be careful. Don't swerve outside the line, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was living in Colorado, people would always crack the joke and say people come here on vacation and leave on probation. Have you ever heard that?
No, I never heard that.
Yeah.
That's I could kind of understand. I can kind of understand. I moved to Colorado, to Denver in 1978. So, long before you were born. And things were a lot different back then than they are now. And then I think a lot with, the marijuana being legalized and stuff. So we get a lot more people coming in, and there's a lot more opportunities to get into, situations that you otherwise would not be in.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what they meant. I found out the hard way that it was true. But it's just funny because I heard that the whole time I was living there, and then next thing you know, I was leaving on probation.
And the next thing you knew, you made that a bumper sticker.
Yep. Yeah, so I got out and eventually fought that case, got that out of my back. Luckily, work had my back. They were standing there for me, looking out for me. I came back, and honestly, I've heard people say, like, before you left and whatever happened, nobody really ever asked me questions, but they're just like, for whatever happened, you're a pretty average program manager, but when you came back, you're freaking killing it. I'm like, that's because I have no choice anymore other than to do what is right. Like that let's just say it was 2 weeks. It's like 2.5, almost 3 weeks. So not the longest. I'm not going to sit here and claim I've done yard time or time like that. I'm not going to sit here and claim any of that. It was only a couple of weeks, but it was a long couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's amazing how long a few weeks can be.
Yeah, especially when you're sitting by yourself in a little room and it's cold, and the window you look out is frosted, so the sunlight, you can't even see outside of it.
Wow.
And to make it all worse, you're wearing the same clothes as everybody else. Yeah, it's terrible. And so you put yourself in that situation, it's a long 2 weeks, a very long 2 weeks. But yeah, so I'm back at work, and I'm killing it. I'm doing great. I'm starting to do even better. A little bit of time goes by. It's time for that case to close, and I go to court to close the case. And I go, a bunch of hoops to jump through. I'm interstate compacted now, meaning that I get to leave Colorado to come to Utah. Just got to go sign some paperwork. And while I'm signing paperwork, another officer walks up. He's like, Isaiah. I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Something. I find out I have a warrant in Denver now. like what the heck is going on? I'm like, why is all this stuff like raining down? I'm finally doing good with my life. I'm finally really focused on everything that matters, and everything is catching up. But this is why I speak of karmic debts. The way I look at it is, I'm not like the victim in this story. I'm really just paying the price for the choices I made. A lot of the selfish decisions I made, a lot of the bridges that I burned, a lot of the poor choices, to myself. And I even look at like my positions with women, and, I felt guilty and embarrassed, but just kind of how I was hopping from one to the next and one to the next, and lying, and, not being a good person, there's all those negative things that I could say about myself. I just really realized that like life was having me pay the price. It was a karmic debt that I had to clear. Luckily on that case, it was a lot quicker. I was in there for about a week, and then I got back home, which again was crapping my pants because I thought that I was going to lose my job. But that one, luckily, there was just pretty much nothing they could charge me on, and it just dropped. So that one's out the way.
Please be careful when you come back to Colorado.
I haven't really said this before. Most of what I've said so far to you, I've never really even said before. But now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm a little more timid towards going back to Colorado.
Yeah, can't you send somebody else to get your stuff for you?
Yeah, I might even just have them sell it, just auction it off.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be a little cautious or resistant.
yeah. It's definitely still, it's weird because I still have anxiety to this day that like there's just going to be a police officer that's going to come knocking on my door and be like, hey, we need
Wow.
you. You know, I know I'm not doing anything bad. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not, involved in any of the things I was involved in at one point. But there's still that thought in the back of my mind that like somebody's going to come knocking at my door, or my boss is going to call me and say, hey, we got to let you go. It's like traumatized me to
Oh,
like the,
I'll bet. And
yeah,
maybe you might even have a library book that you forgot to return.
something.
Anything.
Yeah, at this point, man, anything could happen.
Jeez, that's just crazy.
But luckily that came to an end and that was done. Um, this was last summer now, to give you a little bit of a timeline,
Mhm.
when all of that was finished up. I believe it was last summer. And last summer I had a lot of fun still. I was still drank and hung out with friends and whatnot. But the more I drank and hung out with friends, the more I realized it's just not really who I am anymore. I wasn't involved in all the other stuff, or some nights I was gone by 11. I wasn't out late till 4 or 5 in the morning. Um, but around this time is also when I got a little bit closer with some people. I started hearing about different problems people were having, and I started realizing like it's not just me. Like every single person in this room struggles with being lonely. Every
Mhm.
person in here has crazy anxiety, and that's why they're doing the pills, and that's why they're drinking.
Mhm.
The depression that follows is it's because of the choices they're making. And so I started digging a little bit deeper on myself, but I also started digging a little bit deeper in through them, and started having deeper conversations, understanding their lives, their perceptions, their problems, all those things. I'm proud to say now that I've helped a few friends stop drinking, stop doing drugs, get into a better life. I've even helped one of my friends find a better job and break from his 9 to 5 that was absolutely taking everything from him, and put himself in a
Wow.
much better position. I've also helped that same person get into much better shape. I mean, we're only 6 weeks into this program, 7 weeks, and he's already just like feeling way better. Uh,
Wow.
but yeah, long story short, it's just I started realizing that like I could help people, maybe not these people specifically, but there's people out there just like me who know this isn't where they belong, who know that they're not happy doing this, and who know that like they need to do something different. And maybe they just need to see somebody else doing it. And so I woke up one day and I decided like I'm just on a mission to help people now. And that's what I'm focused on doing now, is I'm focused on helping other people. Whether it could be something as simple as they just want to lose weight and feel better about themselves. It could be something that somebody's going through a divorce and just needs help, somebody to help them through it. Somebody struggling with anxiety, drug problems, whatever it may be. I really pride myself now in my perceptions on the world and my mindset. And in anybody I can help touch and impact in any of those ways, like I'm here for it. It is all fairly new. And if you don't know me, it's kind of, you could ask the question as far as like, why would I pick you type of thing.
Mhm.
But I think the results will speak for themselves as things start to come to light and people start to realize that we're really doing something over here, and we're really impacting people and changing people's lives.
Mhm. So then how long have you been doing this, reaching out and helping other people?
It's been about 3 months now.
Okay, so would you say that you have a complete, like, your coaching program? Does it consist of, just listening to people and advising them? Is it the physical end of it? Because I mean, I know how therapeutic and how healing movement is, and especially from looking at some of your photos, the kind of strength training that you do, that really can change somebody's life completely. And when you're working your body that hard, and especially when you're feeling the results and seeing the results, that really has an incredible impact on your mental health.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a huge impact. The answer would be is there's always going to be some physical portion in it.
Hmm.
Um, I even if it's 2, 3 days a week, I prefer to like at minimum put people on 3 days a week, just because the impact you're talking about. I mean, it's going to help you so much, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, just mentally, there's so much that comes out of it. And I don't expect everybody to come in there and want to turn into a bodybuilder. I don't even consider myself or have any aspirations to be a bodybuilder. Not at all. But
It looks like you are.
well, thank you. Thank you. That's I do like to look a certain way and I like to feel a certain way. But it's not about bodybuilding, it's not powerlifting, it's not doing a show. None of that is what I have any interest in, right? I just understand the power and how much the gym has saved me. Because you got to remember, at one point I was that 120-pound kid who was running away from my problems, and now I'm 180 pounds, not the biggest guy or the tallest guy or the strongest guy, but I'm 180 pounds, pretty lean, pretty strong, and I feel a lot healthier. And I really don't think I would have got here without the gym. Like, I don't think so. I mean,
I love the fact that you went from being a 120-pound, dare I use the word weakling? I don't mean to be
no, use
insulting,
it
but
because that's what it was.
I was a skinny child too. I mean, I was made fun of all my life. I didn't really fill out until I went to college and got to 15, freshman 15. So I know what that's like. It's really tough to be that underweight. But you went from being a 120-pound weakling to a bouncer just a few years later.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's crazy because there's a lot of things in my life that are very ironic, like that statement right there, that I never thought I would be able to say were true. Like, even from something like growing up, like I despise drugs and alcohol. It's like, I'm never gonna do it. I don't know if you remember the DARE programs in elementary school and
Yes.
stuff, but yeah, I was always an advocate for those. And then I went from that extreme to the other extreme to all of a sudden just completely sober. Like,
Well, I guess the circumstances were right or right for you. I mean, you never know. I mean, you can be have those strong convictions. I'll never drink. I'll never do drugs. But when you're in a situation that you have so much coming at you, and you're in a new city and you're in a new job, you don't know anybody, and then financial difficulties, I think that sets us up for falling into the trap of addiction.
I think so too. I really do. And I think a lot of it comes from Hollywood and the media. We see so many movies where there's that one character who has so much potential and just so much pain, and there's so much you get into touch with this character. And what do you see them do? You see them with like drinking problems, drug problems, and somehow in the end that star comes out on top, right? And so, for looking back on it now that I'm older, I realize, like, for whatever reason, I felt like that's what my path had to be, is my path had to go through these dark times and these hard times, and this is how I did it, because I didn't consciously make those choices for those reasons. But looking back at it, I think those types of things are what, like, gave me guidance, I guess you could say. And it's funny because now I'm on the opposite end of, like, I made it all through all that, just like in the movies, and came out on top. But but not everybody does. Not everybody does. There's some people who lose their lives, and I hate to say it so extreme, but there's some people who lose their lives. There's some people who lose their lives figuratively as well. They'll never be the same, but they're physically here.
So let me ask you this. What would you say to that 21-year-old, 120-pound kid? If that kid could see where you are right now, if somebody had said to you, okay, Isaiah, hang in there, because this is what you're going to look like at the age of 29. This is where your life is going to be. What would you have said?
Oh, it's a good question. The one thing I tell people nowadays is, what you go looking for is what you'll find. Their perceptions on the world. Your perception on the world is exactly what you're going to see. So, like, kind of like your frequency is frequently what you see, right? And I tell a lot of people that the sooner they learn to remove the rose-colored glasses, which is the trap that we all fall into with social media, movies, life, and drugs, alcohol, all the problems. I probably would have told myself that I need to remove those rose-colored glasses sooner, because there's much more than what it is that's in front of me and what I'm choosing to see. Because a matter of perception is really the start of it for most people. I feel the moment you really like, I guess the best way I could put it is, let's take it to money. It's not as meaningful, but if you know how to make, let's say, $150,000 a year, and you know how to do it, there's no reason you're ever going to want to go and make less, right? So if you can see a way to live a better life and experience a better life and have that better life and all the things that come with it, once you have it and you've done it, there's really no other reason to go backwards and do something the other way, right? So yeah, I think I would just tell myself that just remove those rose-colored glasses, like get them off your face now.
Well, that was very poignant, the way you put that and the way you described it. And I would not understand why anybody would not want to work with you. I mean, that's just, you have so much to offer.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I know there's a lot, and there's a lot more to come. There's a few people, I have a handful of people I'm working with right now. And honestly, I take a lot of pride in them being my purpose right now, because just seeing their lives change, even the way they talk and the way that they see the world. Again, I'm talking about perception a lot, but there's their perceptions changing, and I see their life going a different direction. I mean, honestly, it gives me purpose. And I feel like that's what my purpose is nowadays. It's to not only build the life of my dreams and the character, just to master my self-development, but to help other people do it as well.
Do you work with women as well as men?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. I don't like to put myself in a box and, exclude anybody. I know some people, they're like, maybe you'll have more success if you focus just on men or something, but I can't help but feel like, what if there's that one woman who just wants to change their life? Like, am I supposed to just neglect her? Like I can't do that.
Yeah. Like we said, I was telling you before we started recording, that's why I have men on the podcast, because I love hearing their perspective. I love hearing their stories. And I think that there is way too much energy being placed by maybe social media, society, I don't know who, of trying to separate us and putting us into different categories. And we're all human beings, and we all want the same things out of life. And that's why I think when we can share our stories and we can really appreciate and understand where everybody else is coming from, we're all human.
Yeah, it's very, very true. I think I've become a really large empath throughout this past couple of years, because I really just see it as like, at the end of the day, we all want to fit in. We all want to be loved. We all want to find success. We all want the same things, but for whatever reason, we're fighting each other for the same prize.
And so you're building your coaching practice and still working full time, correct?
Yeah. So currently I'm building my coaching practice. Like I said, it's still fairly new. So haven't been able to really step away from my program managing gig. But I also do high ticket sales on the side as well. Again, one of the biggest parts that I'm doing right now is still building my character and building my lifestyle. So I just feel like if I'm going to talk to you and help you build a better work ethic, I myself have to have a crazy, insane work ethic. And so taking on a lot right now, but it's working.
And we're all works in progress. That journey never ends until you take your final breath. I'm here to tell you that.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I don't want to sound too dark, but it motivates me is, when that final breath happens, years will pass and none of it'll matter anymore. It'll all kind of be forgotten, right? I mean, it's kind of sad to say that, but I say it because so many people are controlled by the thoughts of others, what other people think, what other people this, or their own limitations. But the reality of it is like, if you chase after your goals today, people will forget in 5 years. Like, you have to be willing to be laughed at. You have to be willing to be mocked. And you just have to be willing to be open to learn and grow and develop. So that's really why I say that. So I know there's people out there listening who have something they want to chase after right now, but they're too busy or worried about what other people think. Just know that at the end of the day, none of it matters.
Well, I am really excited to follow you and see how this develops and your practice continues to grow, because I see some really great things happening in your future, and I find that incredibly exciting.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Super motivating me, Cheryl. It's always good to hear feedback like that, so I appreciate it.
And so tell the listeners how they can connect with you, where they can find you, and learn more about you. and follow you and watch this journey.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So currently, I mean, you can find me on Instagram. It's my last name, Orozco underscore fit. That's OROZCO_fit. Currently that's what I have right now. I am working on a few other, websites and other things to really kind of bring more value to people. But at the moment, that's the best source for me.
Well, let me ask you this. Once you get a little bit more settled and, the website's established or whatever, and you're happy with where you're at, will you come back on the show and give us an update?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that'd be great. And we could talk about some more things that are happening today. That'd be awesome.
Okay, I would love that. So, Isaiah, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You are just a delight to talk to, and I thank God that don't come back to Colorado. I just won't. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, yeah. I might have to take your advice on that one.
And if you do, be very careful. Or if somebody pulls you over, just send me an email or call me and say, "Hey, come bail me out." Whatever. I'll vouch for you.
Yeah, right. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you as well. I really do appreciate that also.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. Oh my goodness, what a story. I feel so motivated right now, and just really encouraged that this world is going to be a better place when we have more people like Isaiah out there helping us. And just remember, you can heal from anything. You can be the best version of yourself that you want to be. You have to get out of your head a little bit and don't listen to other people and what they have to say, because their opinions really do not matter. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.